Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody. Welcome, West Point, Mississippi. Dudley, I think we're going to learn a lot today.
Oh, yeah.
I've had a lot of questions about the whole process of suppressors or silencers, whatever you want to call them. But I have more questions than I have answers. And Mac, that's kind of like you're the epitome of having more questions than answers.
I am Curious George.
That's his first name, George.
So, look, guys, we've got a guest on today, Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central. He's the founder, CEO. Let's hit the horns for him. and I tell you what, he's got a heck of a business model. Welcome. We're thrilled that you're here, Brandon.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. Honored to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I've heard nothing but great things about you, and I've heard a whole lot of great things about Silencer Central.
Good. Well, we're starting off good, right?
Well, it's my understanding you're from Alabama. You're a fellow Alabamian, and somehow you've made your way to – how did you get to South Dakota? Let's learn a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I always say both my parents and all four of my grandparents were born in Alabama, so I feel like I'm 100% Southern. But, I'm a pharmacist by trade. I went to school at Chapel Hill up in North Carolina, and every year I'd have to keep up my pharmacy hours. And I used to go with my dad because he's a pharmacist too, and he had to keep up his hours to these conventions every year. And they told me, they said, you don't want to meet that young lady because she's from South Dakota. And I figured out what that means is once you marry her, then you end up moving here. So that's kind of what happened to me. You should have seen the look on my parents' face. I mean, they're not in Alabama now, but of course they spent most of their life there. When I told them I was moving to South Dakota, they looked at me like, wow, what did we do to piss you off that bad?
That's funny.
That's a big difference in lower Alabama and South Dakota.
Well, pharmacy to suppressors is also a big difference. But,
true.
Both of them involve pills. So
I thought you were going to say you got too mad at the South Alabama turkey, so you went somewhere where it was a little easier.
That too.
Yeah. Mac relates everything back to turkeys. So.
I do.
There we go.
Well, so seriously, how did you transition from pharmacy to silencers?
Yeah, good question. So, I spent most of my career in the pharmaceutical industry. So like kind of on the business side, I've always kept my license up, but I've did like pharmaceutical sales and then marketing and training and sales management and kind of moved around with that. But when I moved out here, I started prairie dog hunting. And, I was just thinking like shooting rats in the South or whatever, just basically they're prairie rats. And I just noticed every time you shoot at them that, eventually they'd go in the hole. So I was looking for a way to, kind of make the hunt a little bit more fun. And this was like in early 2000s. So I bought a suppressor and used it, prairie dog hunt. It really changed everything. So that's when I was like, man, this is kind of cool. And the real truth is the license is pretty expensive. So my wife was kind of leaning on me like, all right, we're spending $1,500 a year for you to have a couple toys to play with. Maybe you ought to sell a few since you came from pharmaceutical sales. And it's kind of how it started. I started working gun shows and sportsman shows and farm shows and started out in one state. Now we're in all 42 states. So it was sort of Dave Ramsey, when I was on his show, he calls it a side hustle. And that's pretty much what it was. And then it just kind of evolved. I got kind of forced into it full time. My employer ended up letting me go because they felt like it was a conflict of interest or reputational risk for them. So it got me to focus on it full time. And it wasn't until like 2012 that I really doubled down, and that's all I did. So from about 2005 till 2012, it was, working all the shows almost every weekend and then still having a day job during the week.
Yeah, that's
the American dream right there.
It really is. And you may have answered my first question. I was going to ask, and it may be 42 states, but have all the states, or how many states have embraced the use of a silencer/suppressor for hunting?
So silencers are legal in 42 states, and there's only one state that you can't hunt with them where they're legal, and that's Connecticut. And I usually follow that up with who would want to hunt in Connecticut anyway, and no one's ever argued with me. So.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that all of them hadn't adopted it, because when I look across the pond in Europe, it seems like you're the oddball if you're not using it. Do you call them a silencer or a suppressor? What is?
I try to use them interchangeably because some people are funny about it. The way I always explain it is the feds who regulate me, they call it a silencer. The guy that invented it, he called it a silencer. If you look at Google searches, most people who are looking to buy one call it a silencer. But people who've bought one and they're calling me to buy another one, they call it a suppressor. So I usually try to use them interchangeably just so nobody's upset. But honestly, just from a legal standpoint, the guy who made it and then search engine on Google, it kind of is a silencer, just kind of based on that.
And then a lot of folks refer to them as a can,
Totally.
Just to make it easy.
Yeah. You hear whisper pickle. You hear all kind of weird.
Whisper pickle. That's new. Okay. I like
Lord. That. Something about that doesn't quite sound right. Well, so, when you Google and look at this, there's these guys at Silencer Central have figured out how to use the ease and simplicity of the internet and email and all that to make this whole process. It's so easy. Brandon, could you just kind of let's start, and can you help understand the difference in a trust and doing it as an individual? And it seems like in the last couple of months, things have gotten a lot easier. And
they've gotten a lot quicker. Yeah. So, you can buy either ways. You could buy it as an individual, and then so I should step back. So think of a silencer transfer very analogous or similar to buying a truck. You got to change the title of ownership. If you go to a dealership and say, hey, I want to buy a truck, then they've got to ask the state to change the license from ownership from that dealer to you. So it's very analogous to getting a silencer. So in simplest terms, we're asking the feds to retitle that serial number ownership from us to either you or your trust, or the most common options. The limitation of doing an individual is then only you can use it. You have to be there when it's being used. So that's a limitation. And then also another limitation is once you pass away, it creates a lot of paperwork for whoever's doing your will and your paperwork. It creates an issue. So in our mind, really the best way to get it is through a gun trust. You sometimes hear people say NFA gun trust, but we offer it free. It doesn't really require any additional paperwork. And the benefit there is that the silencer ownership is transferred from us to the actual trust. And then you can add other people that are 18 or older on the trust, and they can use it while you're not there. And then also the other benefit of the trust is you can define who gets it when you pass away, because the trust will still own it. You just won't be, technically on the trust anymore. So really the trust is the best way to get it. A lot of local gun stores sometimes recommend against it because they feel like it brings additional scrutiny or additional paperwork or additional costs. But, since we do it free, we just recommend, almost. So every morning we have a meeting with our team, and right now we're at about 30% people, 32% this morning we're doing an individual. And of course the 68% we're doing it as a trust. An advantage to doing it as an individual is sometimes the feds will approve it a little bit quicker because they don't have to read through that trust. The good thing about, Silencer Central is our trusts are essentially the same. We had it, created legally where it'll work in each state. So the feds don't have to necessarily spend a lot of time reading it because they're used to ours. It's the same one. So they get approved a little bit quicker. But even still, an individual application that we submit digitally will get approved typically a little bit quicker. So I'd say the average right now is maybe a week or two for an individual, and it might be close to a month for a trust. So it's not that much difference.
Yeah, I remember when I applied for my first silencer, I had to call an attorney's office, and they set it up, and I felt like they kind of pieced it together just from other trusts that they found on the internet. And
True.
You guys have streamlined that and made it so much easier for the, purchaser of a silencer to attain one. And so I think that's where you guys come into play. It's just so much easier than it used to be.
Yeah. And I think that, it just sort of walking into the situation when I first walked into a gun store to buy one, it was sort of handed to me, the paperwork said, go figure it out. I mean, in a nice way, it was sort of like, this is your burden, go figure it out. Where we took a different business model and said, how can we put the burden on us? And then we also took a different approach of how do we work with the ATF to get some guidance from them on what we could do digitally and how can we basically scale it? Because, some days we'll, ship 5 to 10,000 silencers a day. So you got to be pretty buttoned down to kind of handle that kind of volume from a sales and also just, logistics, getting it shipped out the door. We got 2 shifts here working night and day, mailing silencers all over the country. Um, so yeah, it's sort of a different approach, but we just also worked with the ATF to say, hey, can we do this digitally? We realized the laws are written in the 30s that deal with silencers, and then because it is a firearm, the Gun Control Act was written in '68. So how do we work with you all to make sure that we're doing it the right way, that you're going to approve it and not put us at risk or our customers, and make it a digital process so it's really easy. So I'd say it really took off during COVID because it was a message that people had a hard time understanding, that we can mail a silencer to your front door and you didn't have to leave your house. That was the challenge. But before that, we had worked 100% events. When I started the business, I just worked gun shows, and then I started working sportsman shows, and I started working farm shows. And um, once all the shows were canceled during COVID, I was like, guys, we got to figure out a different model. And by that time, we were licensed in every state. So then it just became a message of, we could ship it to your front door and we manage all the paperwork for you digitally. It's really taken off. I mean, there's always growing pains. I've had sometimes, staffing was difficult in COVID. You're getting, a couple thousand calls a day and you've only got 30 or 40 people answering the phone and you really need 50 or 60. But no, it's been fun. I think a lot of people, they always ask me what I like best about it. And I always say that people at the shows would sort of look at me and say, well, do I really need a suppressor? I'm shooting a deer and I probably take 3 shots a year, 2 to sight it in and 1 on the deer. Why would I need a silencer? And I always tell them that any customer I've ever talked to that's bought a suppressor from me, which is a lot, 100% of them will say, I'll never shoot again without one. It's just that, it's that big of a difference. It tells itself.
It reminds me of the analogy that us gamekeepers and food plotters use about a front end loader on a tractor. Once you get one, you don't want to have a tractor without one. It's just part of the deal.
So that must be what they've experienced in Europe, because you don't see any photography in the European magazines without a guy with a silencer.
Yeah, it's almost like, it seems like it's a courtesy thing. They almost, because of course South Dakota's rule, but once I got into Minnesota, I'd hear people say, hey, my neighbor, he says he doesn't mind if I shoot, but I never hear him shoot. So I want to be polite and get a suppressor. I've never really heard that before, but I sense that in Europe too. When you travel over there, they're like, well, it's just polite. It's the right thing to do. You don't have sort of the noise pollution. It makes sense.
And that's how we got interested in all this. We you may have known, we've got one of our television show and long-term partners is Nosler. And we were dealing with Pat for years and loved their ammunition. And then all of a sudden they started talking to us about suppressors, and we've got a couple that we're trying out, and we've just been real impressed. But the reason that we got excited, there's 2 reasons. We've got on this table, there's guys that have young children that then the noise is a factor. They want to try to introduce them to the firearm and lessen the noise. But then there's some of us that are like, man, we need to shoot some does, and we want to do it quietly and not spook all the other games. So, we've really been paying attention to these things, and I'm just excited that it's what's occurring, that it seems like it's caught on. And thank goodness. Can you please tell us what has happened recently that sped up the whole process? Because when you talk about waiting 6 months for something, I think that would, a lot of people just say, I
don't think I ever waited. It was 10 or more months for mine, all 3 of mine.
It's funny. I had a meeting set up with the NFA branch, the National Firearms Branch in West Virginia, like once it first started speeding up. And of course, that was the question I had with them. I was there with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. That was kind of our question. So I found out 2 things. One, that there was an acting director there that was an attorney. So he knew exactly legally what they had to do to approve these forms. So he started working the forms himself. And feedback from him was he was able to cut out 80% of the work that they were doing. It just didn't need to be done. When they switched from paper to computer system does a lot of the checking for them. So there was a lot of things they were doing manually they didn't need to be doing. So essentially they were able to cut 80% of the processes out and shrink it down to 20% the amount of time. The other thing they did is they changed their approach. So instead of waiting to give you a background check, what they would do is they do a background check instantly. And if you're approved with a background check and you bought it as an individual, they send it right through the same day. So we have a lot of people that get approved literally the same day. So when we submit it digitally, they do a background check. They send it to the FBI to do a background check right then. And if it's approved, then it comes right back approved to us, which is great. Because the analogy they used is before, it was sort of like going to a fast food restaurant. If you ordered something off the menu that was completely different, they made the traffic back up behind you until they served you. Now the approach they're taking is, okay, we're going to have you, if you have a different order, park over here, and then we're going to let everyone else that goes through. And the analogy is with a background check. So if you've ever been arrested, or you've ever, if you have the same name with someone who's a felon in your state, a similar, similar name, similar date of birth, then about 30% of people fit into that category. They have to manually review it and just see if you're legally able to own a firearm. But the reverse is true, that 70% of people never been arrested, and there's no one in their state with a similar name that's a felon, and it just goes right through. So those two quick things of reducing the amount of work they have to do and that they were overdoing, and then also just doing the background checks instantly and pushing them through that day, those two things have, when I first started doing it, honestly, this is a long time ago, 2005, it took about 2 weeks because there's just nobody was buying them. And then during Obama's term, it got up to a year and a half because he changed some laws that made people kind of want to get into the game even more. And then that got it backed up. And then I would say, like you said, about 10 months is what it was for like the last most recent 2 or 3 years. And so for it, that was the big question, is how does it go from 10 months to like real time? I mean, people are like, something's up, the government's doing something, they're getting ready for the election, or they're going to outlaw them, they want to get them off their table before, there's all these, conspiracy theories. But no, it's basically, I feel like that is basically probably some gun guys in there, just me interacting and talking to them. I could tell they knew a lot about firearms, so I think they were just looking out for us.
Hey guys, listen up. Let me tell you about an awesome deal Springfield Armory is offering now through the end of 2024. When you purchase a brand new model 2020 Waypoint or Redline rifle, you'll receive a model 2020 rimfire rifle with a black synthetic stock absolutely free. That's an over $400 value on the house. You know we love Springfield Armory and their top-notch products you'd be proud to hand down to your kids and grandkids. So why wait? Learn more about this incredible offer at GearUp2024.com. Springfield Armory. Defend your legacy. It seemed like the private sector chipped in on everything and helped make it more efficient.
It's cool to me that y'all offer the free trust, because I mean a lot of different services. I mean, from $60 to $400 to set up a trust, or then if you hire an attorney, it can be even more than that. So I guess. So how can I get Bobby to add me to his trust of these suppressors that he's talking like he has?
Well, tell him just to call us so we can do it for him.
So how does that work? So how many people can you have on a trust, and can you add an additional person, or how does that work after you have it set up?
Yeah, good question. So here's normally what we do. So like we would just put, say, you on the trust initially. So then the ATF only has to vet you. And then there's only one set of paperwork, one set of fingerprints, one photo, just keeps it super simple. And then once it's approved, you can add anyone you want to that trust literally with a stroke of a pen. And there's no background check on any of those people. And it's limitless. You can put as many people as you want. I mean, when it gets confusing though, is if you try to go buy another silencer, you either have to take those people off or use a new trust. Most people, we just give them a new trust with the same name. And so every time they do a new trust, and then once it gets approved, they add those same people back on.
These guys have figured out how to do it.
And they have an answer for every question.
It's really cool. So why do you have to have or why is a trust the suggested thing? Like I have we have some guns, but I don't have my guns in a trust. Should people put guns in a trust, or why are the suppressors or silencers different?
You probably wouldn't want to put the firearms in a trust unless it was like just specific to you, like some kind of family trust and who's going to get stuff when you pass away. Because typically, the ATF wants a copy of this trust. So you wouldn't want a list of all your firearms in there with the serial numbers and things like that. But, years ago, they considered a trust to be like not a person. And the benefit was that you could get the silencer actually without a background check. And then that's where Obama changed it and wanted you to put somebody on there. But so years ago, when they first started this in 1934, there was really no national database. There was no FBI, computer that they could check to see if you were a felon. So the way it originally started was your sheriff had to sign that you could legally own and possess a silencer there in your individual area. And there was places across the country where the sheriffs just weren't willing to sign it. I think the way they looked at it is, well, I'm not getting paid for this. Am I taking on risk? Or, for whatever reason, they decided not to sign it. And so people started using trust because it did not require the sheriff to sign it because it was being transferred to an entity. And then the background check was done on whichever person came and picked it up. So that's sort of the history behind it. But I would say the trust really got popular in 2014 because when eForms first launched, the only way you could buy a silencer and use eForms, which was quicker, was if you did a trust. And that's when it really took off. And then it took off too much that the ATF got worried. And as soon as Obama got elected, they told him to make a change. And then that's when he said, hey, there's got to be a person on that trust that has a background check done at the same time we vet this instead of just the person that picks it up. So that maybe more history than you wanted, but it is interesting how it's evolved. But it's definitely the best way to go with a trust. Like I said, it might slow down a couple weeks you getting approved, but it just adds the flexibility of adding more people to it, and then also picking who gets it when you pass away.
Wow, Dudley, you got a question?
I was just going to say, ask what is the most common use for a suppressor? Like, what are most of your customers getting a suppressor for?
Probably with us, probably my background being a hunter, and then also with us being in South Dakota, which is predominantly a lot of hunters, we focus a lot of our marketing efforts on the hunting crowd. So most of our customers, when we survey them, they'll identify themselves either as a target shooter or hunter, but most both. And what's interesting is I find most people will buy a 30 caliber suppressor and then they'll use it on almost every rifle they own. So they'll use it on a 6.5 and a 270 and a 30-06 and a 308 and 300 Win Mag and kind of that whole family. But most of them are hunters. They'll identify as a hunter, and that's basically based on our marketing efforts. Now, of course, that wouldn't be the same if someone brought probably a handgun one, but for our 30 cals, which are our biggest seller, because people see it as a multi-caliber. I would say the other thing that we did a little bit different is we make ours, almost everything we make is all titanium and it's super lightweight. And typically hunters don't want a lot of weight on the end of their barrel. So they kind of lean towards, a lighter silencer. So that probably gets most of our customers as hunters as well. And we've always focused on how do you make it really, really quiet, because I felt like that's what the hunters want too. Their goal is not to scare the game, so that if they do miss, they get an additional shot, or they don't really pollute the area, so they can continue to hunt there and not have to leave if for some reason they did shoot and want to shoot another one.
So look, all the modern firearms now you can buy them with the barrels are threaded. If a guy's got an older rifle, is it much trouble to get that barrel threaded?
It's funny because when I would work the shows, I could see that was an obstacle. Guys would look at me like, all right, I don't know who's going to thread it. I don't know if I trust that local guy I know, or I don't know if he can. So it's something that we offer too at Silencer Central is we can mail people basically an empty rifle case. They take their scope off, bipod, tripod, whatever, put their rifle in it. We give you a FedEx ground to ship it to us. We thread it and ship it right back. So like I said, every morning we have updates. Right now we're about 4 or 5 days out. So if someone sends one in, within 4 or 5 days, it's going to come right back to you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. So I have one more technical question, and then I want to talk about some fun stuff.
Yeah,
But okay,
sure.
So trust, and then the next thing you hear a lot is stamps. Can you explain the suppressor silencer stamps, the tax stamps that you have to have?
Yeah, good question. So, so earlier I talked about the analogy of if you transferred a truck title from the dealer to the person who bought it, then you got to go through like the local courthouse. You got to pay a fee. So very similar with a silencer, you have to pay a fee. So when the National Firearms Act process, which is what silencers are underneath, began, it was strictly for machine guns, and they made it 100% tax on machine guns. So in 1934, a machine gun was $200. So that's how they created a tax for that. So basically, they were trying to highly regulate, the machine guns, and then eventually silencers got thrown into the same process. But that's how it started. So you have to pay a one-time $200 tax for them to transfer it. And back when they were the paper ones were more popular, they'd write the serial number across the stamp, and that's how they canceled it. So Yeah, essentially, when you think of a tax stamp, you're having to pay a $200 tax to the feds. What's interesting is that money goes directly to the U.S. Treasury, and it's not earmarked to anything. And so we have two federal lobbyists in D.C., and we've been working with them to get that $200 switched over to conservation, because we feel like the Pittman-Robertson has done so well for the states that it would work really well going into that sort of process that's already built out and has something in place. So what we like about that is there'll probably be over 1 million silencers sold this year. So, easy math, that's $200 million that
Oh my
could go to
gosh.
conservation.
Richie, hit the home. So if you could pull that off, that would be huge for conservation.
Man, I tell you, of course, I'm the ultimate optimist, because who else would be a pharmacist and say, I think I should sell silencers, right? I mean, so I feel like Democrats and Republicans both agree with conservation, and it's a lot of money. And what you're seeing is the number of hunters are decreasing. So the amount of money going into that Pittman-Robertson is going down. So this is a beautiful way to pump, hundreds of millions of dollars into that and help the states. And I mean, for me, also the sort of benefit is I hope the states get used to getting that money. And when some of the blue states like Oregon or Washington says, hey, we ought to make silencers illegal, they'll look at how much money they're getting from that, people buying silencers in their state and go, you know what, maybe we should keep them legal because we like this money coming in and funding our state game fish and parks.
That's a great point. And it would probably be easy to just put a box. If you're going to use it for hunting, that money definitely should go to Pittman-Roberts in a similar
100%.
fashion. And if you're not going to use it for hunting, then it goes to the other, wherever else it went. But
yeah, and part of Pittman-Robertson's money does to go to like shooting ranges and target shooting and things like that, and hunters education and gun safety. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel optimistic. I mean, we have a bill in the House, and we're pretty close to having the same bill in the Senate. And when we first sort of launched the congressional bill, the ATF was still taking 10 months. So we put a little hook in there saying that they had to approve them in 90 days, and then we would give them a small percentage of that money to sort of update their technology to help them get there. But they were able to get there without any more people, without any technology. So now the goal has been, how do we pull that back out and put 100% towards conservation?
That's a very worthy cause. Yeah, everything I hear about him in his business sense. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Well, they just keep making it more efficient, and it's going back where it needs to go. It's a big deal.
Well, but and also let me say, so when we started this process, and I wanted to learn about Silencer Central, Pat at Nosler was just he just said lots of great things about them. Y'all sell a lot of their suppressors.
Yeah, we're their number one dealer. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was going on and on. So then I wanted to understand the process of how they worked. And so I went to Carter, who works there, helped set me up. And I've been getting emails and going through the process. It is super. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Bobby can't print on his computer. So if Bobby can figure out how, if Bobby can figure this out,
I'm telling you,
then it's got to be really buttoned up.
It's that simple.
Even a caveman can do it, like Bobby.
There is a young lady there named Cynthia that helped me one time. She was so nice. So I need to give a shout out.
Shout out to Cynthia.
So
perfect.
So let me kind of circle back around. If you're out there at the range and you've got a silencer on, are you still wearing hearing protection, or do you just totally go away from it?
The example used with the range problem is most everybody else out there probably isn't using a suppressor, so you almost have to. When I hunt, I don't wear, because I've tested ours, so they're underneath that 140 decibels, so I always feel comfortable. I think if you call the official audiologist, they might say, hey, it doesn't hurt to also have backup, hearing protection in case you need it. But for me, one of the big benefits of hunting suppressed without hearing protection is to be able to talk to other people, because usually when I'm hunting, I'm not wearing hearing protection anyway. And so just be able to have that ability to talk to other people, and not have to, kids don't have to wear hearing protection, things like that. It helps. I mean, in other words, it's kind of up to the end user. It's typically safe enough where you don't have to.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Hey, Lanny.
Hey, Bobby.
Have you ever wondered if your feeder went off or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this. This is some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
You know, we always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
To learn more about it, visit moultrieproducts.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie.
I have permanent hearing damage, and it sounds like cicadas are in my head nonstop. So I don't like to shoot a rifle or anything without a suppressor or some type of hearing protection. But one thing I can add to that, we use a lot of shooting houses here in the South, and if you're in the shooting house, it does help a lot to get your barrel out of that window as far as possible, because if you're inside of the shooting house and that report kind of hits the roof and bounces back at you. I've had a couple of times where I didn't have hearing protection on. I had the can on my rifle, but it still made my ears ring because I was kind of tucked back into the shooting house. And now I know to make sure the barrel's a good ways out of the window.
Yeah.
But at the range, I'll still wear them. But when I'm hunting, I don't want to have to put hearing protection on. It works great.
Well, Mac, like Wilkes, he's a young kid. How old is Wilkes? 5?
He's 5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, it would be he'll grow up around a silencer. He'll never probably. It would be so much better for his ears.
It really is. And I mean, we all take hearing, protection pretty seriously, I would say. I mean, I've got a cracked cochlear, so I'm completely deaf in my left ear. So I take it really serious. And in the suppressor aspect, it's really a no-brainer for me, and it should be for everybody. But I am curious, have you had any luck with the shotgun suppressors, and how does that change the I guess trajectory of the BBs?
So I should back up and say that my engineering team is working on one, and I'm confident that we're going to have a good one soon. So I'm excited about it. I get, because of course I like squirrel hunting and doing a lot of things like that, or even turkey hunting and stuff where it'd be kind of cool to have one that's smaller. So I'd say the limitations of the one that's sort of the best selling now is it looks like a loaf of bread. So it's kind of big. It's a little heavy. It's hard to swing. But the way it works is there's rails inside there that carries the wad down through there. So it doesn't technically open up. And then also your choke comes out, and basically the adapter that holds the suppressor to the shotgun is a choke, and it has a adapter on it. So it'll screw into the normal threads where the choke goes in, and then it screws onto the silencer. And then you could buy those adapters based on what, choke pattern you want. But, people use them, I think, probably more of a novelty, but we're hoping that we can create one that's going to be a little bit more user-friendly. We feel like some of those out there probably have been created for tactical, and we sort of feel like our engineers are very focused on hunting. So I'm hopeful that we have something that's going to be, a little bit smaller and not get in the way. But I do think there's a big market for that. I mean, when we have calls with the big shotgun makers, I think they don't think there's a big market for it. But my team and I feel like there is. And, we're definitely going to jump in that and try that, because I think it's totally worth it. And I think a lot of people, they would say internally, hey, you can shoot a shotgun pretty much year round.
Well,
and
turkey hunting.
Yeah, and you shoot a shotgun way more than you shoot a rifle. I mean, think about dove hunting or duck hunting.
Or duck hunting in the duck blind or in the pit blind.
I'm just thinking about just turkeys. If I could be quieter on the property, I'm going to do it. It would make sense.
And if you can make a 6.65 constriction, just let us know, and we'll be good to go on that.
Yeah, hold on, turkey. Let me put these headphones on before I shoot. That's why I want a suppressor.
Well, yeah, and so with turkeys, I mean, there are people that try to wear. You've got to hear. Hearing is everything. So you don't want to wear. You don't want to put in. You don't want to do anything to not be able to hear him drum or whatnot. It just makes total sense. I think it would surprise you how many turkey hunters would just say, heck yeah, I got to have one.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But the one that I see now, it is like a loaf of bread out there. That one
big,
would spook. could potentially
So,
spook
it's
birds.
interesting because Federal, the ammunition company, we work with them some, and we did a squirrel hunt, and last year we did it all suppressed, and we shot twice as many as they did the year before. It was the same number of guys. So it does show you how, being suppressed can help you, and there is some benefits. But even think about using a 410 in a scenario like that would be kind of neat.
That would be very cool.
It is. That statistic that he just mentioned, that kind of says it all right there too.
It does, and we hadn't hit on, like, we were talking about kids using these, but it greatly reduces the recoil, not just the report. And so, you don't have to shoot these anemic rounds at deer. You can make a 30-06 kick like a 223 and have the report of a 22 Magnum. How awesome is that for a kid shooter?
Is there any scares for the grains of bullet, the type of bullet, the how much powder's in there? Like, is there anything that you need to be careful of what you put through your suppressor or silencer?
No, because just think of it as the hole through the middle is bigger than a bullet, so nothing's touching.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
It is amazing, like you said. I mean, what's interesting is that the animal can't tell where the shot came from because you're losing that loud percussion of. So, I used to hear coyote hunters come to my booth and say, "Hey, I shot a coyote. I missed. The bullet dropped behind him. He started running towards me." And I've seen it with deer too. You shoot, and maybe there's 2 or 3 there, and one drops, and they're kind of looking around like they don't know where it came from, so they don't know which direction to run in.
Mm-hmm.
It does create a different dynamic. It's very interesting.
So Brandon, if I'm at the range and I've got my 25-06 and I fire at one time without a suppressor, and then I screw a suppressor on and get right back and aim at the same target, will the impact change at all?
Good question. It will. So what I always say is if you sight the silencer in, it's going to stay that every time you put it on. But if you take it off, it'll usually change it a little bit. Just having that extra weight on the end of the barrel, you typically won't get as much, jump. And so it's typically going to shoot a little bit lower. Usually it's sort of rare. Like I said, once somebody uses a silencer, rarely do they ever go back to not using it. I mean, I did a wolf hunt in Canada where I couldn't use the silencer and I had to go back and, re-sight it in. It's just shot a little bit higher, but yeah, it will change it. But the point is that once you sight it in with a silencer on there, every time you put it on and make it, hand tight as it'll go, it'll stay the same. You don't have to worry about sighting it in every time.
A wolf hunt. Now you got my attention right there. So you couldn't use the suppressor in Canada?
No, I couldn't. So I ended up getting like whacked with a scope right in the face because I'm not used to that recoil. I was not. I shot one and I looked up. I go, "There's another one." So I shot 2 because that was the limit. It was the first 20 minutes in the blind. So everyone makes fun of me that I get super lucky, and I said I don't know how that happened, but
yeah, we hear our buddy Michael Hunter complain about all the different firearm laws in Canada all the time.
Yeah.
Did y'all call the wolves in?
Yeah, good question. So again, it was my connection with Federal. So the CEO at Federal set me up with this guy. It's super cheap. He's got like basically a deer camp up there, and he's trying to get rid of the wolves. So they would drill into the ice, and they would put like bait in there, like moose kill, roadkill, whatever deer, and it would kind of freeze up in there. It was interesting. The wolves would come by and check it every couple of days and make sure it's still there, and then they'd eat it later if they needed it. If they weren't hungry, they just kind of knew it was reserved there and it would stay. But yeah, we basically baited them. You just sit in the blind, and usually they're in and out pretty quick. So you can't really mess around. You got to stay pretty focused. But no, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect, but they signed me up. I'm going back again this year.
That sounds fun. Yeah, we've been learning about wolves. It's an interesting topic. What you got? Go ahead, Mac.
There's so many different types of silencers or suppressors, and there's different weights, different titanium, aluminum, different links. So what does somebody need to look for? Like, so if they're wanting a 30 caliber for their deer rifle, what does somebody look for? I mean, what do you suggest people look at when it comes to, purchasing one?
The thing to remember is that silencer is going to work better than you think it did, because most people are super skeptical unless they've shot it a few times and they're familiar with it. So I always say, whatever you shoot the most, try to get a suppressor for that, because there's silencers out there that'll work on pistols and long guns and works on everything. And I feel like you'll get it and probably you'll be impressed, but you'll be a little disappointed because it's not perfect. So I would say that, if you say, hey, I shoot my deer rifle the most and it's a 30 cal, then I would get a 30 cal suppressor. But then think about what you're going to use it for. So if you're basically, if you're hunting, typically you want it lighter weight. So maybe think titanium. Um, you know, Look at reviews online and look for something that is quiet, because typically hunters will want it quiet. And then a lot of people that hunt too like to be able to take them apart and clean them. I would say like maybe 40% of the people that I've sold to over the years, I could tell they're like, I clean my firearm, I want to be able to clean my silencer. So there's silencers out there that'll come apart to clean, and you can, clean the baffles, get all the carbon out. And sometimes they'll get louder if they fill up, because then you have less volume for the gas to expand in. But, I've got big sales team here that, you could call them and kind of tell them what applications you're thinking about. And, there's no obligation. They love hunting and shooting, and they'll help you figure out what's the best. But typically the first silencer people get is going to be a 30 cal, and then they'll use it on all their long rifles. And, one that's popular too, it's a modular, so you can make it longer or shorter. So it comes 9 inches standard. So it's going to be super quiet 9 inches, but you can reduce the size down to 7 inches. So it's a little bit shorter if you want it to be shorter, and then it'll be a little bit louder. So, there's all kind of options out there, but typically titanium is going to stand up better. They use that for a lot of, sort of military type application, just because it's lightweight and it's also super strong. So titanium is always a good way to go. It's going to last forever. And if you're doing a truss, you're going to want to be able to pass it down.
That was my first choice, was a 30 caliber. And I can put it on the end of my 30-06. I can shoot a 300 Win Mag through it if I had one. And then you could screw it onto an AR, maybe with an adapter, and shoot, 5.56 through it. I even shot my 22 rimfire through it a few times, but like you said, it wasn't the kind you can clean. And so my next purchase was a rimfire can that you can take apart and clean. And gosh, I think I use that one more. The big one for the deer rifle is for meat collecting, and the 22 one, you can take it squirrel hunting.
Absolutely.
But for plinking with a little 22 pistol, it is so fun.
Yeah, kids love it. I mean, you can't see how many fathers say, "Man, my kid's addicted to this. It's got me able to spend a little bit more money. The wife can approve because the kids love it."
Yeah. So, Brandon, it sounds like you enjoy the predator hunting, coyotes. If I'm kind of reading this scenario right, are there any stories that you can share with us, that experiences that you've had with a silencer and calling in coyotes and them not figuring out where you are? Maybe it's allowed you to kill multiple coyotes. It's improved the hunt.
Yeah. So last week I was at Rosebud Reservation. I went with the Lucky Duck guys. So I was fortunate enough to go with some guys that have won the calling contest at the Worlds. The guy who makes the calls, he actually raises coyotes so he can make the calls. So it was fun to shoot with them. But yeah, I mean, there's so many hills there, and you'd have a coyote come around a hill, and there'd be 4 or 5 of us there. We could shoot it and lay it down, and then another one might come right down aside the other hill, and it didn't seem to influence them at all. And I mean, they were making that point throughout the whole hunt that, if we had a suppressor in that open area where the sound can carry maybe a little bit further, it probably would have scared all the coyotes off after one shot. So I do find that almost 100% of my customers, when I first started this business in South Dakota and North Dakota, was sort of my first area where I really focused, because they had a gun shows called the Dakota Territory. Almost everyone was a coyote hunter. You rarely find a coyote hunter that doesn't own a silencer, just because, I used to always ask them, if you call in 3 coyotes, how many of the 3 do you want to shoot? And the answer is always 4. So it's how do you put a suppressor on there so you don't scare everything else out in the neighborhood and just keep calling for longer? But no, it makes a huge difference. Like I said, almost so that you never see a coyote hunter without a suppressor.
Yeah.
And all of our game and fish departments now are encouraging us to shoot more deer. There's a lot more deer on the landscape now. I was watching a video, the Lindsay way, Cash Lindsay, shot 3 does in one hunt, but 2 of them were back to back. Yeah. And, so he shot one. They didn't clear the field. They just kind of all looked up like, what's going on? And he was able to take out another one quickly for that same reason, that the deer didn't really know which way to run. And so, Boom.
So I know what's one thing that's really cool that's on y'all's website at silencercentral.com is you have the Easy Play plan, the Easy Play Pay plan. Do you have a? Can you select what that shows up on your direct deposit statement, or have you figured out a way to put like tithing or flowers or anything like that, just so when it shows up, once a month,
gym membership?
Yeah.
Yeah, gym membership. There you go. It's funny because to your point, actually, I created Easy Pay for wives because guys would come to the show and they're like, my wife's going to kill me if I pay for this silencer 100% up front and I got to wait a year to get it. She's going to absolutely kill me if I come home and tell her that. So I was like, well, how much do you want to put down? And we'll just let you pay while you wait. We don't charge any interest or fees or anything. And it went over really well. I mean, we got up to like probably 60% of our people would end up buying through Easy Pay. And it's just sort of like, hey, I'm in the boat with you. I don't want it to take that long. Now that it's gotten a little bit quicker, I know I always said that when you call someone and say, hey, your silencer's approved, you still owe some money, they find a way to get that money real quick because they want their silencer. But no, Easy Pay has been super popular. And again, it's just kind of listen to the customer, right? Customers are like, my wife's going to kill me. And I say, hey, just put $200 down and pay it monthly. And then, and same thing now, if it's approved and you want to wait, a month or two to keep paying on it, that's fine. We just wait till it's paid for, then we ship it.
The Furminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Furminator does the rest. Check it out at thefurminator.com.
Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
Mac, tithing was a little far.
That was a little
I kind of went over.
So we had commitment Sunday, so that was on my mind.
Orphanage or
something,
something like that. But Richie, let's ask him a trivia question real quick while we got him.
Uh-oh.
So, Brandon, you got a chance to win a Mossy Oak Companions button-down shirt. You really like this thing. And being from the South, when you feel that 100% cotton and how soft it is, you're going to love it.
Yeah, you can embroider your logo on there.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, today's winner, the listener who left a review, is Ozark Dweller. So they left a review, though, that went over well. And so he won a prize from Mystery Ranch Backpack.
Okay. Those are nice backpacks.
They're bomb-proof. I love those things.
All right, so we got 3 of those left, guys. So y'all leave reviews, and you got a chance to win one. Okay, go ahead, Rich.
All right, so the question here is true or false. In the early days, FedEx couldn't cover its fuel bills, so the founder took his last $5,000 to Las Vegas and won $27,000 playing blackjack to keep the company afloat.
True or false? And you can think about this for a second, Brandon. But you being the you've got this heck of a business model going. I thought you would really we kind of customized trivia questions for our guest. And this one was customized for you.
Boy, I like the sound of it, but it does sound a bit far-fetched that most entrepreneurs are not going to put their money in something that risky.
It does sound far-fetched. And this guy's from not far from here. I wish if Tox would have been here. He knows
Fred Smith.
Fred Smith.
Yeah, Ole Miss guys. Yeah.
So read the question one more time, Richie.
In the early days, FedEx couldn't cover its fuel bill, so the founder took the last $5,000 to Vegas and won $27,000 playing blackjack to keep the company afloat.
Boy, that sounds so specific too. Blackjack. I'll say true.
It is true. Wow. Can you believe that?
Yeah. No.
I mean, what a great story.
Yeah,
that is cool.
Yeah. I was just fascinated by that. And, Fred Smith, Memphis is not very far from here. And
yeah, we helped him a few years ago with a lightning struck tree in his yard.
Well, he's got a big bass pond. He's got quail hunts. He's a really neat guy. But I thought that was just a fascinating story. And then that's laying it all on the table.
That's good. Yeah, I like it. That's good.
So I had some questions, but most of them have been asked already. But So we're talking about rifles and shotguns, but what about pistols and suppressors?
The only thing you can't suppress would be like a wheel gun, so a revolver, but everything else, the only modification is you have to switch out the barrel, which sounds more complicated than normally it is. Just as an example, for around $100, you can get a barrel for a Glock that just drops in and it's got threads on the end. So the other benefit is most people, similar to like the multi-cal on the 30, a lot of people will buy, say, a 45, a handgun suppressor, and then use it on a 40, a 45, a 9, and a 10. So you can kind of get one that covers all of them. And they have like an adapter in the back called a piston. They just kind of screw in and screw out, and then you can accommodate really any threads, whether it be metric for maybe a foreign gun or left-hand threads, right-hand threads, standard threads. So yeah, it's popular.
Yeah, how cool would it be to have a 45, like a 1911 that you can screw a can on the end, and then have like a 44 mag lever action rifle that you can get the barrel threaded and shoot subsonic 44s at deer, at like 100 yards and in. How fun would that be?
It sounds like you're thinking it'd be a lot of fun.
Big fat caliber,
What else you got, Matt?
That'd be awesome.
So is there, as far as muzzle loaders go, or like a 35 Whalen or Whelan, and I mean, or 45 70 or any of those guns, can you shoot suppressed with those?
So the straight wall cartridges you can. So the straight wall cartridges, they're, and I don't know about Alabama, I can't remember. Like some states, you can only use a straight wall cartridge on deer, and so like around here, I think like Iowa, Ohio, some of the other Midwestern states, they won't let them use in Minnesota, so they can use straight wall cartridges. And those, we do have suppressors for those for sure. Now the muzzle loaders, I haven't seen one for that. A company years ago came out with a muzzle loader and they put a silencer on it, and they said it was 50 state legal because a muzzle loader is not a firearm, and that silencer, it was not suppressing a firearm because it's not a firearm. And then they got in some legal trouble. I never saw them again.
Oh, that does sound like that'd be a nightmare. This has been really interesting. And the thing that my takeaway is, this guy's a hunter. This guy's paying attention to what's going on. This guy's trying to do things for conservation. This guy understands what we need to be able to help our kids protect their hearing and make our hunting property have less noise pollution. All this makes so much sense. It just makes too much sense, actually.
Yeah, I can't think of any cons.
The accessibility and the ease of the website and, Silencer Central, and just how fast and digital everything is what makes it so much easier, because you hear the tax stamp or you hear the trust, and that kind of would cause some reservation. But I mean, just the how streamlined everything is, it's no brainer.
It's perfect.
No brainer.
I tell you, Brandon, you put together a heck of a thing now. It's
No, thanks. I mean, I always say that, there's a lot of manufacturers out there that, make things. And the good thing about us is, like, I just went to shows, and I still work shows. So for the last 20 years, I've worked shows, and you can listen to people, if they had a problem going through the process, then it's easy to come back and say, hey, we got to figure out how to fix that. And if people say, hey, this is the problem I have, you didn't solve, it's like, okay, how can we fix that? So it's just been good to kind of have that consumer interaction. It's funny because I went to go to my uncle's house there in Alabama, and I told him I want to go to one of those shows. They have them there in Birmingham and Montgomery. And I told him, I said, I want to make sure that the hunters in what I was used to in South Dakota thought the same way as they do in Alabama. And this was probably like 10 years ago. And I found it was spot on. It was 100% the same, because I thought, well, if there's a difference, then we may have to message but when I went down there and talked to people that are mostly, whitetail hunting and listen to what they need, I was like, man, this is spot on. This is exactly what, other parts of the country are looking for too. So no, it's been fun. So one thing to mention is that when people hear this, we'll be having a BOGO going on. So we literally have a buy one, get one free. So if they get on our website or call us, if you buy a silencer, then we'll also give you a rimfire one at the same time free. And we have them in stock. So it's not something you got to wait for. So theoretically, you could buy one and within a week or two have it on your front door, both of them.
How about that?
I mean, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I have one more legality question for you. So what is the reciprocity process from like state to state with a suppressor? Like, so I could go to Bobby's farm in Alabama if he had to ever invite me. I mean,
absolutely. So It's interesting. There's a form that you have to fill out if you're carrying a short barrel rifle or a machine gun or destructive device over state lines, but there's nothing that's required for suppressors. You can submit that form and they'll sign off on it for you, but it's not required. No one does it. It's so the easy answer is there's no requirements to go in between states that are lawful. I mean, the tougher question is if you're driving through a state where they're illegal, you got to be a little bit more careful as far as locking it in the trunk and probably not have it connected to the firearm and some little things like that. But yeah, where you all live and you're based and where you'd probably hunt, you're not going to run into something like that. So you're fine just to carry it across state lines.
Do you need to have some form of paperwork on your person when you're carrying it?
Yeah, a lot of people, I asked the ATF that one day kind of straight on, like, what's your interpretation? And they say that you need to be able to produce it in a reasonable period of time. So that doesn't necessarily mean you have it on you. A lot of people think you have to have it on you, but you don't. Usually we recommend people now when you get the e-forms, they'll send you a PDF of your approval and you could just keep that digitally. I've never seen anyone ask for a copy of the trust, but having that digitally, I use Dropbox, so I'm able to pull up stuff, remotely from my phone. The only thing I would tell you that most people don't know is because that money goes to the US Treasury, that's considered a tax return. So technically you don't have to legally share a copy of your approved Form 4 with anyone except a Treasury agent or the criminal side of the ATF. So anyone else that asks to see it, even a game fish and parks, you could tell them no, technically, because it's considered a tax return and it's protected by privacy. So a lot of gun stores, if you bring one in and you want it repaired, or they'll want proof of ownership, or a range might ask for it. And it's up to you whether you want to share that, but technically you don't have to.
Well, Brandon, that makes me want to ask if I'm hunting somewhere and a game warden walks up to check me, and he sees that I've got a suppressor, is he going to ask me to see my tax stamp or anything?
I've never seen anyone ask for that. I mean, what I would say is the only thing they could probably ask for is, hey, I want to check that serial number and make sure it's not stolen, because they probably have a database. They could pull that up to see if it was stolen, but technically they can't ask you for proof. Like if you do a Google search, you won't find a list of all the dealers that sell silencers that's put out by the ATF. But if you do a Google search on the ATF website, you can download all 80,000 dealers and all of their information in every state, drilled down to exactly where they're located, their phone number, fax number, everything. That's available through like a Freedom of Information Act request. So they just post it on the website. But I pay a $500 tax per location to be able to sell silencers. And it's considered almost like it's all tax protected. So they don't release any of that information. They're not even supposed to, like if someone called the ATF and said, hey, can you tell me where I can go buy a silencer? They're technically not even supposed to tell you who's licensed to sell them.
Wow, that kind of sounds complicated. I think I'll just stay in my lane here. But I love the idea of a suppressor, a silencer. I love what you guys are doing at Silencer Central. It's very impressive. And I think our audience would benefit from.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And you can get a free suppressor.
Well, they BOGO
with the purchase of another one.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they sell nozzlers too, so it's a win-win all the way around.
Okay, so one thing I didn't mention is, so Silencer Central gives away free silencers to conservation groups for their local charity events. So this year, Carter just told me as I walked in here, we're like cumulative in 2021 is when we started keeping up with it. We're up to over $9 million. So my encouragement is if there's anyone listening to this that does conservation type activity, local chapter events, and you're not currently having access to our silencers, call us because we'll give you the silencer 100% free. And whatever it raises, we let your local chapter keep 100%.
How about that?
Whoa.
Yeah, hit the horns if you could.
I mean, that's really, putting your money where your mouth is.
It is.
You can't say enough about that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just real impressed, Brandon.
Good, thank you, sir.
He's an Alabama guy. What else?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to the game this weekend. My daughter's in school at Vanderbilt, so I told her I'd fly into Nashville and pick her up and take her down to the Auburn game.
I'm a little worried about this game this weekend.
They already had fun with one Alabama team, so we'll see how the other one does.
All right, I'm not going to talk football here, but Brandon, we've enjoyed. Is there anything else that we hadn't covered you need to point out?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I always say I rarely run into a Southern person in South Dakota, so it's always fun to get a chance to chat with people from the South.
Yeah,
I still tell my wife's like, you lived here longer than any other place. I said, I don't care. I'm 100% Southern.
No doubt.
You can't come out of you. There's no way.
Oh, heck no.
Well, we've enjoyed having you. We'd love to get you down here sometime and go on a deer hunt.
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah, absolutely. Just tell me when. I'd love it. That'd be great.
All right. Well, look, we have really enjoyed this. Richie, is there anything else we need to do?
I got my pen here so I can sign on the dotted line to get on your trust there.
Yeah, Richie.
You can get on your own.
Yeah. All right, guys. This has been a lot of fun. Brandon, guys can go to silencercentral.com. And you guys go check it out. It's the real deal.
Piece of cake.
Yep. Mac, you got anything else? You got a blank look on your face, so I'm gonna say no, but
I'm just looking at the website.
all right. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.